Hello and welcome back to this episode of This Healthy Life podcast. I have Tom Nikkola with me today, and he is a fitness and natural health expert with over 23 years of experience in strength training, nutrition, and metabolic optimization, which is such a big buzzword these days. Everyone's trying to optimize their health and metabolism, I feel like. And he also specializes in training high-performing adults and fitness professionals, and he has a lot of amazing science-backed strategies and looking at genetics that we're going to deep dive into today and see how this plays a role in optimizing your health. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Erica.
Yeah, amazing. So I'd love for you to start just with a brief intro about yourself and how you got into this space.
Sure. I think the original place that really got me into health and wellness was I had leukemia when I was 4 years old. And so I spent a lot of time at the Mayo Clinic. That got me, even at a young age, very interested in health and wellness. And so I went to school for pre-med biology. But while studying that and thinking about medical school, I met with a lot of doctors who weren't especially enthusiastic about their career choice. And I kind of realized that I'd have more fun and fulfillment helping people stay healthy than I would treating disease. And so I switched my major to exercise physiology. And shortly after college, I started out as a personal trainer for Lifetime, which is one of the largest fitness organizations in the United States. I was there for about 14 years of my career. I started out, as I said, as a personal trainer, got into nutrition, and then eventually I was the vice president in charge of nutrition, supplementation, weight loss, metabolic testing, lab testing, fitness devices. And as kind of the owner for those businesses, had to do a lot of educating other trainers on lab testing and metabolic testing and nutrition with the team that we had. And that then led into, of course, as soon as you start testing blood, genetics is another thing that people start asking about. But it really wasn't until the last few years where genetics, I think, has become more of an interest and people are starting to become more aware of it, whether they're talking about MTHFR or COMT or MAOA and some of the stuff that's connected to our mental health, not just our physical health. But that was really a quick summary of what led me up to where we're at today. For the past 10 years or so, my wife and I have run our own independent fitness businesses and do a little bit of consulting and things, but I'm not in the corporate world as much today as I once was, and still working with clients and writing and spending time on Instagram.
Yeah, I love your Instagram page. It's so informative and just such a good kind of overview of all the different genes and the things that they can affect. And like you mentioned, people are starting to get more interested in that. I think I started learning about it when I got Lyme disease, right? And it was like,
Mm-hmm.
what are your genetics? Like, how are they playing a role in your detox and how your ability to recover from Lyme and things like that. And so I feel like a lot of people that were dealing with chronic illness, really kind of dove deep into genetics. And now it's kind of, starting to get people in the longevity and biohacking group that are kind of a little bit more interested in even just general people interested in health. So it's definitely coming more to light and sharing that it's something that's really important that needs to be addressed and is very unique to every individual as well. So super excited to have everyone learn more about this today.
Right on.
Awesome. So for those that are new to kind of the idea of methylation and genetics and stuff, let's kind of start there just to give an overview. What exactly is methylation and what are the genes that are at play here affecting it?
Well, methylation is really just a process of taking a molecule and applying it to either DNA or to protein to kind of turn something on. It's almost like an on-off switch in our bodies. In the case of DNA, it could be DNA repair and replication. It can be the production of neurotransmitters. And it's a process that requires a number of nutrients, but the one that people are going to be the most familiar with would be folate, folic acid, methylfolate, but really all of the B vitamins. And so as part of that process to produce neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin and GABA so that we feel good, or to support detoxification, we have to provide nutrients like that in order for those methyl groups to be created in order to positively affect our DNA, support our immune system, and so on. And when we have variants of the MTHFR gene, which is really the gene that controls how we, what we do with folate in order to start the methylation process, when we have variants in those, sometimes we're not able to convert like synthetic folic acid, which has been recommended right and left for decades, especially for women who are thinking about becoming pregnant or who are pregnant, as a way of reducing neural tube defects or just to support general health. The problem is about 40 to 60% of the population doesn't do a good job of converting synthetic folic acid into the natural state methylfolate. And so because of that, we run into a bunch of health problems. And so with methylation, that without question, the one that is the most talked about is this MTHFR gene. And people are becoming more aware of the fact that our food supply, which processed foods have been fortified with synthetic folic acid for decades now. I think it was 1983 or somewhere in there when that got started in the United States. A lot of cheap supplements have synthetic folic acid, or the synthetic version for B12 would be cyanocobalamin instead of methylcobalamin. And so people are starting to connect the dots that if they're dealing with anxiety or depression, or they've had problems, miscarriages, for example, are connected with MTHFR, that is part of the problem. Probably not the only problem related to what people are dealing with today, but it is a significant part of it. So as it relates back to your question on methylation, if 40 to 60% of the population can't convert synthetic folic acid to natural folate, or they're just not eating enough natural folate in general, they're not getting enough leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables, they're not supplementing with methylfolate, they're going to have downstream effects of not being able to methylate properly, which affects DNA, cognitive function, and a number of other aspects of health, even cardiovascular risk in terms of blood clots and stuff.
Yeah, it's always baffled me how, you mentioned 40 to 60% of the population has this gene, right? And so, and all our food, all these supplements have the one that we're not supposed to be taking. And
Right.
We're wondering why everyone feels so sick and anxious and having all these health issues when we're consuming something that's extremely toxic to us and not the proper form. And why would, obviously it's probably a cost thing, I'm assuming, is what it always kind of comes down to, but why are some of these brands not using the methylated form that works for pretty much everyone in the population?
That's such a great question. Yes, the natural form of folate does cost considerably more. So from a population standpoint, if there's going to be forced fortification of foods, food companies would try to use the form that's going to be the cheapest, which is synthetic folic acid. I don't know that 20 years ago or 30 years ago that people realized. I'm sure there were some that were seen as on the fringe, but I don't think that most people realized that synthetic folic acid fortification was a bad idea back then. They thought they were doing good. There is truth in that women who are low in folate have a significantly increased risk of neural tube defects in babies. But so they saw synthetic folic acid as a quick and easy solution, and in reality, it isn't. Now, when there's natural health companies who still use those, like I'm asked all the time about, hey, Tom, what's your opinion on these nutritional supplements? The very first thing that I go to on a supplement label, if there's micronutrients in it, is to see which form of folate and B12 they have in it.
Same. So, I always take a look. I'm just like, and if it's not the right kind, if it's not the methylfolate, I'm like, this is just a cheap brand. I was like, I can't trust anything else that they're using, right?
Yes, exactly. Either they know that it's a poor choice, but they're doing it out of the desire to be as profitable as possible, or they don't know what they're doing in terms of formulation. In either case, probably
not
best
a good brand.
To leave it on the shelf and,
move along, right?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So in addition to the MTHFR, which is kind of like the big one that I feel like most people kind of hear about, there's also a lot of other genes that are affecting our methylation. And some of the more popular ones are like COMT or the CBS gene. Can you talk a little bit about those and what processes those kind of have in our body and why we need to be aware of those as well?
Yeah. So the COMT is going to be probably the second most popular in terms of what people are familiar with. That one affects the rate at which we break down catecholamines. And catecholamines are compounds that we either produce in response to stress, or we can consume them, or basically consume stuff that triggers catecholamine release, like stimulants. And so there's like two extremes that people can have with COMT. They can have slow COMT, which means they are slow to break down catecholamines, or they can be super fast. So we probably all know somebody like my mom, for example, when she literally can wake up at night, make herself an espresso, and then go back to sleep. And so she would be able to break down those catecholamines super fast, has a great tolerance for caffeine, and just go right back to sleep, and it doesn't affect her. Now, I haven't measured if she's getting deep in REM sleep, so there might be some people saying, "Oh, it's probably still not good for her." I agree, but
my husband's the same way. He can have an espresso after dinner and like come home and pass out. I'm like, if I even look at some caffeine after 2 p.m., I'm up all night. Like,
yes,
so we know what I am, right? What he is.
Yeah. So a fast metabolizer or fast COMT, they're going to break catecholamines down quickly. Slow, it's going to take a long time. So like a single coffee could leave someone feeling anxious in the afternoon, even if they drink it in the morning. If they encounter something stressful, like they get in an argument, or they have a hard time with a boss, or something happens with their child, it's going to take a long time for them to come down off of the effects of that stressor. And so what's important to know about that is, like, if you are more prone to being someone who breaks down catecholamine slowly, well, you just have to adjust especially your nutrition. Like, the logical thing is to minimize the effect, like the caffeine that you're drinking, or other stimulants. Be aware of other stressors, but then you can also use exercise in a way that helps you burn through some of those catecholamines faster than someone who's already burned through it half an hour after they had their cup of coffee.
I wonder that's why I like my morning workout right after I have coffee then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm always like, I have to work out in the morning. Like, if I work out later, it just doesn't have the same effect on me. But yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that connection, that also, like, exercising, or that even like a stressful moment can kind of upregulate that gene as well. So
Yep. And the interesting thing about the COMT is that is also part of the process of methylation too. So there's a number of steps with methylation, which is what we got started talking about. And so just because somebody is getting enough folate to support MTHFR doesn't mean that the whole methylation process is all resolved. And that's where, like, looking at more than one gene is helpful when people are getting genetic testing done. It's become a lot more affordable and accessible in recent years, especially in the United States. About a third of the people that I talk to through my Instagram account are in Europe or Australia, and it's becoming more accessible there. But I kind of feel like the tests are, they're a few clicks away here in the United States. So it's a good idea not to just test for MTHFR, but to try to get a handful of the methylation related genes tested, like COMT, MAOA, which affects our histamine levels. You had mentioned CBS. VDR is one that affects how we metabolize and produce vitamin D. So there's a number of genes, but I think that a good starting point is thinking about MTHFR and supporting it, because it's super simple to do with diet, lifestyle, supplementation, and it's extremely detrimental when you're not supporting it appropriately.
Yeah. Or eating foods with the wrong folates and B vitamins, right?
Yes, exactly.
Which is so easy to do, especially if you're, eating things in a package. For sure, you're probably encountering it at some point in your day. So,
Yep. And you had mentioned CBS before, so that one is going to be a gene that affects sulfur metabolism and glutathione production. So, like, glutathione is our body's primary antioxidant, but it's also a huge factor in detoxification. So like if more and more people have been exposed to mold, it seems like lately, or they're at least aware that they've been exposed. Like now that people are paying attention, they're opening their walls, they're seeing mold on the black mold on the walls, that kind of thing. And so if somebody finds they've got a variant in CBS where glutathione's negatively being affected, then maybe glutathione supplementation can be more helpful for one person, whereas for somebody else, they try it and they really don't get anything out of it because genetically they're already set up to produce glutathione at a level that they need for supporting detoxification.
Mm-hmm. And then, so I want to dive into this a little bit. So just because we have the genes, it gets complicated, right? It doesn't mean that they're actually expressing. So
Correct.
Genetic testing is kind of like stage one to kind of just see like, hey, what variants do you even have that you need to kind of be aware of and kind of check out? And then from there, how do you kind of figure out if genes are expressing? Is there certain testing that you can do that tells you what genes are kind of affecting your body, or is there certain labs that you can do to kind of, test your glutathione levels or things like that? Or how do you know which ones you need to support and which ones you just should leave alone?
It's a great question. I'm of the opinion that the least testing that we can do to help people feel better, the better, because
gets expensive and complicated
fast. Thousands of dollars on testing. And sometimes you almost get obsessed, like, oh my gosh, I've got all this stuff working against me. And in reality, there's a lot of people walking around who have all of the wrong genes, but they're eating well and exercising appropriately. They're getting enough sleep. They're strength training. They're eating enough protein, and they feel great. And so I look at it like, if somebody's been feeling like they've been dealing with anxiety for years, or they really struggle with detoxification, they have consistent gut issues, like, okay, so we can either make some changes with your nutrition, lifestyle, exercise, and supplements to support your gut or to support your mood and see how you respond, or you can go to the route of the testing if the testing is going to reinforce the fact that you have to make the right choices with your diet, lifestyle, exercise, nutrition. So I look at it as something that's more of it affirms the need to make changes more than anything. People often ask, like, well, should I get tested for MTHFR before I start taking methylated B vitamins? Well, no, just take a high quality multivitamin with methylated Bs in it, because whether you have the MTHFR variants or you don't, it's still going to be helpful. So even though I have all this testing easily accessible, if I'm working with a client, I'll usually just say, hey, let's get you down the path of better choices first, and then look at this later on. If something still isn't, you're still not feeling as good as you should be, even though you're doing all the things right.
Mm-hmm. And then, so when you work with someone like that, what are some of the symptoms? Like, say they started doing everything right, like they're eating right, they're doing the right kind of workouts, taking the right methylated vitamins. What are some symptoms that might still be kind of creeping up that are tied to genetics that you can maybe at that point do a little bit of a deeper dive and say, hey, you actually might have this gene activated that we need to do a little support on?
Yeah. Like sometimes they're eating what they think is healthy foods. I mean, everybody, when they think about supporting their gut, they're probably eating some fermented foods because they've heard that there's probiotics in it. Well, if they have an MAOA variant or even MTHFR, which can be affected by histamine, those histamine-rich foods, which generally for the majority of people are going to be healthy, are going to leave them feeling lousy. That may trigger anxiety. Of course, that they might be sneezing and watering eyes and puffy, and even though again they think that they're eating healthy food,
something healthy, yeah.
Or avocado, for example. I mean, everybody sees avocados as the healthiest thing in the world, but there's a lot of histamine in avocado, and so if somebody's having avocado toast every morning for breakfast because they think they're doing the right thing, we could just connect the fact that they have watery eyes and their sinuses are plugged mid-morning with what they're eating for breakfast, but that doesn't change everybody's behaviors all the time. So again, that's where testing can be like, okay, I told you, you really need to
Here's your
find
verification.
something
You need to
else
cut
for
back.
breakfast.
Yeah.
Yep. Maybe eat some meat for breakfast instead of the avocado toast.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. And then, so you also work with a lot of people that are dealing with like adrenal fatigue and adrenal burnout, which, could be exacerbated by having some of these genetic variations, right? But also just kind of daily life as well. So, what are some things that you do to work with people around that, kind of taking into mind their genetics and helping them support them with
Yep.
their adrenals as well?
Yeah, I guess I didn't directly answer that question where you kind of asked like, what other things might people notice when they feel like they're doing everything right to deal with some of these genetic issues, and adrenal fatigue is actually one of them. So they can be exercising the way that they think that they should, the way that their friends do, like maybe they're going to group fitness classes, they're doing kickboxing, they're doing CrossFit like workout program, and they've got friends that are in great shape, they look healthy, they've got a ton of energy, and they just feel completely wiped out. So there is a clear connection between MTHFR, reduced exercise capacity, and more and more people dealing with adrenal fatigue. So again, they think, oh, I'm going to exercise 5 days a week. I'm going to, I'm going to eat well. I'm going to cut back on calories. Maybe they're even eating more of a plant-based diet and not getting enough protein in their diet. And like all of those habits that they think are healthy are actually one by one adding to their overall stressor. They're not getting enough protein to recover from their workouts. They're training in a way that they can't recover from before they go and they work out again the next day. And then over time, that then leads to symptoms of adrenal fatigue. And I know like there might be some listeners that are more of a conventional medicine background, and they'll say, well, there is no such thing as adrenal fatigue. I mean, it's technically that's not a diagnosable condition or anything like that. I look at it like it's more of a state of resilience, like a reduced resilience. And what's interesting about it is I've had a lot of people like disagree with me over the years about whether adrenal fatigue is a real thing. And the majority of time, almost like 9 out of 10 times, it's a guy who is saying that. And 9 out of 10 times when it's someone who's been dealing with adrenal fatigue, it's a woman. And unless you've actually worked with someone who's been through adrenal fatigue, you might think, oh, they're not getting enough sleep, or they're not toughening it up, or they just need to get up and move more. And it is a real issue that sometimes I'll talk about it as cortisol resistance, because what can happen is as you encounter stressors, day after day after day, initially your body will secrete more cortisol to handle the chronic stress. Well, in short bursts, cortisol is a very healthy hormone. I mean, it's something that we absolutely need. It can be energizing. It can help us helps us with exercise. It helps us to move. It helps us to think quickly. But chronically, it's very hard on the body. And so over time, just like our bodies become insulin resistant, where they stop responding, our cells stop responding to the signals from insulin when people are eating too much sugar or too much carbohydrates over and over and over, we can also become resistant to the effects of cortisol secretion. And so then the body can produce less and less cortisol as a protective mechanism. And that then is really the kind of the classic adrenal fatigue symptoms. So some will say it's adrenal dysfunction, but it's really a resistance to the effects of cortisol, where after a while our bodies aren't producing enough cortisol to give us energy. And so people wake up in the morning and they're tired, and they go to bed at night and they're tired, but they don't have any resilience left. Before that, they might be waking up in the morning tired, but they're ending their day wide awake because their cortisol levels flip and that kind of thing. So anyway, I don't know if that answered it or if I meandered into a tangent.
No, it's lots of good information in there. And then, yeah, I mean, I think like like you said, like there's a lot of people that don't believe in adrenal fatigue, but I mean, I personally think that it's a real thing, and I've dealt with it
Hmm.
too, doing like tests on my cortisol and things like that, and seeing that things were not balanced and not correct,
Yep.
and supporting that really helped my energy, really helped me kind of get more in balance. So
Hmm.
definitely feel like it's a big thing, and everyone is under so much stress now, right? Like between the food we're eating and
Yep.
genetics, environmental toxins and exposures, and all the assaults on our body that we're not even aware of that are happening
Right.
on a daily basis, in addition to like life stress. So there's a
Right.
lot a
Right.
lot going on behind the scenes that our bodies are dealing with.
Oh, without question. And a lot of times it's the little things that put us over the edge. So I was actually, this was back when I was working at Lifetime. I had a 35-minute commute each day, and a lot of times I'd listen to an audiobook as I was driving. But I was about 2 blocks from our house. I just pulled out of the garage that morning, and my phone had pinged 3 times. And I have never dealt with anxiety myself in my life
Mm-hmm.
until that
Lucky.
moment. Like I had like my heart was racing, and it felt like it was going to jump out of my chest, and I realized that dinging on my phone was totally stressing me out. I didn't know what it was, but I figured it was because of work. And like that was a good 10, 12 years ago now, and I haven't had notification sounds on my phone unless it's accidental from installing a new app since then. And like that, just something little like that. There's so many people, if you're walking around in public, you hear their phones dinging, and that's just like a shot of cortisol every
Yeah,
time.
you're not meant to
Uh,
be that
no,
available, right? I mean,
no,
just like 10 years ago, we had the iPhone where it like really kind of like ramped up, like being people assuming that you just need to like respond all the time or be available,
yep,
but it's okay to put your phone on silent or airplane mode
yes.
and focus on something for a little bit without being so addicted to it.
Yeah, we tend to think of like big crises as the stressors that are the problem, but in reality, I mean, we've been dealing with big family stuff, financial stuff, food scarcity, whatever it is, since the beginning of time for humans. But it's all of the additional little things that are added on top of that all of a sudden we can't handle it. So even the news or you know whatever it's going to be different for every person, but I guarantee there's probably 3 to 5 things in their day that are unnecessary stressors they could just
Hmm.
cancel out if they chose to.
Yeah, the news definitely is like a big one, right? Like, I mean, I stopped
Hmm.
watching TV and the news, I think like over 15 years ago. Like, I'll watch like Netflix and things like that, like something that I'm choosing to watch, but like just having the TV on with like the commercials and like the news and the tone that they're talking to you, it's like
Yep.
really makes you kind of intense. And we had the fires here in Los Angeles recently, earlier this
Yeah.
year, that was like really stressful, really intense. And that was like the first time I turned the news back on in like forever, just to kind of like be like, what's happening? Like, what's
Right.
going on? And I just felt that antagonism from it, like antagonizing sound and like the voices. I was just like, oh my God, like I don't, having a break from that for so long and then hearing it again
Yep.
really made me realize like how antagonizing it is and how much it kind of stresses out your nervous system. I'm like, there's people that start their day with this every day, like have
Yes.
their morning coffee and watch the morning news. And
Yes.
I'm just like, how can
Right.
people like go on with their day and not be stressed
Yep.
out after like
Yep.
starting like this, right? Like it really,
Yep.
really kind of just reminded me of how toxic it is.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you think of adrenal fatigue, one of the things that just makes me cringe when I hear other personal trainers, nutrition coaches, health coaches talking about it is like they're in the context of helping people. It's this feeling like they have to remove stress from their lives, and that is just not possible, and it's not healthy either. The primary goal in helping somebody recover from adrenal fatigue is to rebuild their resilience. And that can start with foundational nutrition, the right kind of exercise. So uh, traditional weight training and walking is the exercise, the form of exercise that I continually go to. Good basic supplements, getting enough sleep. And then there's other things you can do to further enhance resilience. But that's really what it is about, is rebuilding your ability to bounce back from the stress, not from thinking you're going to remove the stress from life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, so since we've gotten on this topic of anxiety and mental health a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about some of the mental health implications that some of these genetic SNPs can have on you. So you mentioned anxiety, obviously, is like a big one, right? But what are some other things that, how do they affect your neurotransmitters and your mental health levels that could be rooted in some of these genes?
Yeah. So depending on the different gene, like in some cases with MTHFR, it could directly affect neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, GABA. So GABA is your brake for your nervous system, is oftentimes the way it's described. And so like if your thoughts are racing, if you can't shut your mind off, a lot of times it's because you're not producing enough GABA. And if your mind's racing when you try to go to sleep, you just can't fall asleep. So serotonin is like a precursor to melatonin. That one also helps you feel good, feel calm. Dopamine is your reward neurotransmitter. So if dopamine levels are low, then you're probably going to be searching for something to just help you feel good. So like MTHFR can directly affect those three, but some of the MTHFR also affects gut health, as do some of the other genes. And so it may not just be the fact that somebody's not producing enough neurotransmitters because they've got something going on in their head, or it's not that they need an SSRI where you're just trying to recycle the existing serotonin in the brain. But if there's gut dysfunction, like 70, I know it's at least 70. I've seen some stats say as much as 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. A majority of GABA and dopamine is produced in the gut as well by certain bacteria. And so if your gut's dysfunctional, well, it's inevitable that you're going to be dealing with anxiety. If people have gone through bouts of antibiotics, that can, there is a strong connection between antibiotic use and anxiety and depression and cognitive issues. But then on top of that, if the gut's dysfunctional, again, because of these genes, or because of the diet, or because of the diet and the genes, and someone's got leaky gut, that's going to increase inflammation initially, probably in the circulation. But if you've got neuroinflammation, something we'll be hearing a lot about over the next few years. I feel like just over the last 2 or 3 as people have started using that word. But if you've got neuroinflammation, that's going to trigger anxiety a lot of times as well. And the histamines, which we already kind of talked about. So
yeah, I'm excited for there to be more about the neuroinflammation and the tie to the gut.
Yeah.
So I have celiac disease and I don't get any digestive issues, but I get all neuro issues. So it's like I get brain fog and like occipital neuralgia on this part of my head for like a week, and it lasts like 7 days every time. And it's anxiety, insomnia, tired all day. And I don't know, to this day, I haven't figured out anything that helps it feel better or change it. So I'm excited for there to be more insight in that and like more studies, right? Because like maybe it is something to do with like some of my genetics that is throwing something off in my gut, and maybe it is tied to like serotonin, and that's why I feel like anxious and kind of crazy for the week. But yeah, I think that's
how
really
long have
like
you been dealing with that?
Since 2012.
Wow.
Too long.
Wow.
Too long. And I've tried so much and nothing really has kind of figured it out or kind of, dug deep into what's going on. But I feel like there's a lot more kind of research going on around that. More people are talking about it. So hopefully I'll figure something out.
No doubt.
It's challenging for sure, but life goes on, I guess.
Well, I'm sure when you do figure it out, there's going to be hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of other people
dealing with
that
it.
You're going to be able to help
absolutely.
them out as well, because they're searching too.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And then, so I want to talk a little bit about strength training too. So I heard you mention that earlier, that's kind of like that, and walking are some of like the best workouts. And I, about 2 years ago, started really taking strength training seriously. And it's been such a game changer just for like overall health, like strength, and just how I feel in general. So like what makes it so special, right? Like why is strength training so important? Obviously you're building muscle, which is a big piece of it, right? But like, what are the other components that make strength training such a kind of optimal exercise for people to be working with?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, and when I'm talking about strength training, it's more traditional. for lack of a better term, bodybuilding style weight training. And when I say that, the goal is, of course, to either build or at least maintain muscle mass, which is what the goal of, what a bodybuilder is doing. But it's also the format of the workouts themselves. So if someone has adrenal fatigue, the last thing that you want them doing is like back-to-back high intensity exercise with very little rest, because it's a very sympathetic dominant form of exercising. But the traditional style of weight training, where you do a set and you're resting for 60 to 90 seconds, sometimes a couple of minutes, you're in a sympathetic state for just a short period of time, like during your set. I mean, your nervous system is on full alert. You're giving it your all, but then you rest, and during that time, it's actually an aerobic type of activity. Even though you're just probably sitting, you may even be scrolling on your phone, which I don't, unless it's the news or something like that.
Yeah, right.
I don't care if a client is scrolling on their phone, just because they're taking the time to rest between sets. And
as long as they're not getting alerts, right? No
yes,
games.
Exactly. So what's good about that, again, is you're actually spending more time in a parasympathetic state, which is the rest, and it's really the rest and digest side of our nervous system. You're recovering, and the goal with building resilience is to be able to recover from stress easier and faster, which is really what you're doing with that kind of a weight training workout. On top of that, you're building lean body mass, you're stimulating protein synthesis, you're increasing bone density. That you're improving insulin sensitivity. There's a whole bunch of other health related benefits, but I love it for the impact of how you're training your nervous system. And then of course, walking is a parasympathetic state type of activity as well. I mean, I'm not talking about hiking up a mountain. It's just it's a active recovery. If you want to throw on a weight vest, that's fine, but it's still an aerobic state. Easy to talk to a friend who's walking alongside you. You're not gasping for breath or anything like that. So the other types of weight training that are popular today, like I mentioned, CrossFit or a group fitness class or something like that, there's very little rest between sets, which then changes the dynamic of how your nervous system is engaged during that 30 to 60 minutes of activity. So again, in working with my clients over the years, whether it's somebody dealing with adrenal fatigue or they've never exercised in their life and they want to be able to be healthier and improve their quality of life, it's just an easy way to train them safely and effectively. And it's measurable. Like that's one of the other benefits of it. I was talking with a client just today about this, how, she was dealing with some stress related stuff, some MTHFR stuff. I said, even if you do one more rep on the same exercise with the same weight next week than you did the week before, that's progression. And the whole idea with exercise is that we're progressing a little bit every week. Well, if you're not doing something that you can measure in the way that you can measure resistance training, you're going by how you feel. And so if you feel really good during a workout and you're just subjectively deciding how hard you want to work out, somebody that's got adrenal issues, MTHFR issues, some of these other genes, they're going to feel great that day and they're completely wiped out the next day. And I've had actually 3 people just over the last 4 days who said, yeah, I wanted to exercise, but I did it. I saw a trainer. I was wiped out for days afterwards. I was too sore. I just lost interest because it was so painful. But if you're real methodical with, again, regular weight training, it's just safe, effective, incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It might not be as fun. It might not be as sexy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what we see when we're watching workout videos or seeing videos on Instagram or YouTube, but it's the best thing for most people. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. We have time for one more question. So I want to kind of touch on what you just said. Like there's certain people that work out and maybe feel wiped out, right? And like are having a hard time recovering. Is it certain genes that you're seeing that are affecting that ability to recover? And are there things that you can do to kind of support that or supplement that to help those people kind of get back into their routine and, support what is making them kind of feel exhausted after a workout?
Yes, there are genes that affect it without question. Like there's a NOS3 gene that affects nitric oxide that can affect your ability to deliver oxygen efficiently to the working muscles. That can affect your workouts. MTHFR is going to affect your exercise capacity. But in working with clients, it's not usually their genes that are the issue. It's that they're not getting enough protein in their diet, and like eating a high protein meal for dinner does not count as eating a lot of protein. I every day I say minimum of 30 grams 3 times per day of protein, but more ideally 0.8 to 1 gram per pound goal body weight as a target. If people are hitting that and they're still not recovering well, another thing I'll look at is sleep. Like, yeah, are you in bed watching YouTube and movies, or are you actually getting good quality sleep? Which you can measure with a bajillion different devices nowadays. So we can all figure out if we're getting enough deep or REM sleep. Those are the first 2 things that I look at. A third would be the actual program design. So like I wrote a book, which you can get free on my website, the 3 Pillars of Vigor. And that's what it was about, is resistance training, sleep, and protein. Like those 3 things, if people get those down, they will feel healthier than the vast majority of folks that they're around. Just those 3. And I'm not even getting into supplements with that. But that far more than the genes is the issue and the reason people aren't feeling great. With all that said, there can definitely be genetic factors that keep you from recovering. And that's where making sure you're getting enough micronutrients. It may be that you need some digestive enzymes because you're not actually breaking down the protein that's in the diet and assimilating it. And that's where it gets a little bit individualized, but like the base, the foundation, those sleep,
Those 3
protein,
things.
and strength training. Yeah.
And
Smart
then,
strength training.
so you mentioned the kind of protein target for people. Is it the same for men and women, or does it vary?
For men, I just say a gram. For women, like 0.8 to 1 is ideal. Now, again, so the average female, I think, eats around 60 to 70 grams per day. And if she weighs 140 or her goal's, let's say 130 pounds, what I wouldn't suggest is overnight somebody jump up to that, but you just add 10, 20 grams a day, do that for a couple of weeks and work your way up to that higher protein amount. But
it's challenging getting that up, because I felt like I thought I was eating enough protein because I eat a lot of meat and a lot of animal-based protein, and I was just like, oh, I got to be close to it. And then I actually kind of spent a couple days tracking my meals. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like not even close to what I'm supposed to be getting. So that was definitely like a challenge as I started doing strength training, is like really making sure I'm like meeting those protein goals. And I noticed like if I'm low on protein one day, I do get kind of tired by the end of the day, or my brain just kind of starts feeling a little frazzled, and then I'll eat some protein and I come back to life. So it's really, really important, really critical. And I'm glad there's more awareness around upping our protein these days too.
Yeah. I think the 2 big mistakes there, people will say, well, I eat eggs for breakfast. I mean, eggs only have 6 or 7 grams.
Yeah, I thought I was getting protein from my eggs too, and then I realized I'm like, oh my god, this is like nothing.
No, it's not much. I mean, if you do 3 eggs and throw in some meat and something along with it, you'll be able to hit the 30 grams. And the other one is if they go out to eat, they'll get chicken on a salad. Like we go to Crisp and Green is one of our favorite places to get a salad. And my wife will always just ask for double chicken. And oftentimes I'll say triple chicken on there. So getting in the habit of doubling it up when you're going out to eat. And then it becomes a lot easier, but it's more habit than anything that keeps us from hitting those targets.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tom. This has been amazing. I love kind of talking about all these genetics and things going on behind the scenes in our body. So I hope this helps listeners out there. And if people want to find out more about you and follow you on Instagram, how can they find you?
Yep. So it's Tom Nikkola, TOMNIKKOLA on Instagram and on Facebook, although I'm far more active on Instagram. And then my website's tomnikkola.com. And actually, if any of your listeners want to grab one of the guides, I've got like 5 guides on there, and they just use the promo code Erica. You'll get 30% off on that. So there's one on MTHFR, there's one on COMT, one on adrenal fatigue. So yeah.
Awesome. And we'll post everything in the show notes as well.
Right on.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Erica.
Absolutely.